All right, to do truth tables with conjunctions and disjunctions. The conjunction symbol looks like this, and it means and. And if it's asking you for a conjunction, you see this and, both the P and the Q, the hypothesis and conclusion has to be true. Now, you're probably going to have to go back and look at my geometry 2.1 video with truth tables if this doesn't make a lot of sense. And I will put it in the comments. I'll attach a link to it in the comments. All right, so for the hypothesis, there are 4 possible ways that this could happen. True, true, false, false. Okay, for the conclusion, we'll rotate those. True, false, true, false. And then if it says and, we're looking at both P and Q, and they both have to be true for the conjunction to be true. So this one's true, but because he's false, that would be false, that would be false, and this would be false. So only one of those would be true. Now the disjunction is an or, means either has to be true. The P could be true or the Q could be true. If either one of them's true, it is true. So we'll go back with the true, true, false, false. We'll rotate these true, false, like we usually do. And we're just looking at each of them for one of them to be true. So both of those are true. This one's true. This one's true, but neither one of them's true here, so this one would be false. Now, here's one where we've got the P implies Q and the conjunction Q implies R. So we've got a whole lot of these things. I've got a new letter here. So instead of having just the 4, I'm going to have actually 8 since there's another letter involved here. And then I'm going to do a P, a Q, and an R. I'll show you how to set those up. Then I'll do the P implies Q one, and I'll do the Q implies R one, and then I'll do the conjunction one. So for the hypothesis, the P, take the true and write it 4 times, and write the false 4 times. Systematically, the way to do it. Then when you get to the Q, the second one, you're going to take and you're going to rotate it, but you're going to do 2 trues and then 2 falses. Then 2 trues and 2 falses. Then for the third letter, the R, we're going to just take the true and false and rotate those. Okay. Now, I'm looking at P implies Q. I'm going to cover up R so I can't see it. And if you remember from the video that was on 2.1 that I'm going to attach, if it says P implies Q, it's going to be false. The only time it's going to be false is if the hypothesis is true and the conclusion is false. So let's look at this. We got true, true, so he's going to be true. True, true, another true. True, false. Okay, there it is. The P is true, the Q is false, so here's a false. Here's another false. Okay, then this one's okay. It's true, 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 and true. All right, so there were only 2 falses here. Now I'm going to do Q and R. And when I do Q and R, then I am looking at only these 2. And I find covering up all that stuff helps. Once again, the only false will be where you've got a true and a false. The first one's true, the second one's false. There's a false. Let's see, here's another false. And then that means the rest of these would be true, 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 and true. Now, what I'm looking at this time is the P implies Q and the Q implies R. Remember, and means both has to be true. So I'm covering all this up. I don't want to see any of these, just these last 2. Okay, they both have to be true to be true for the conjunction. Well, these both are. So he's true. That one's false because of him. This is false. Another false. Here's one that's true. A false. Another true. And another true.